Welcome to this presentation on academic essay structure. Hollywood has this deep love, I think, for showing writers as these quirky people who sit in attics all by themselves and write and write and write, and suddenly what they turn out is amazing. It's like some form of magic. Like there are good writers and they can just magically do it. And writing isn't magic. It just isn't. And it's not helpful to think about it that way. Effective writing has rhyme and reason. It has signs and signals to help the reader. It doesn't just magically happen. There are parts to it that make it work. It's kind of like a highway where you have design elements like lines, dotted lines, signs that say where you're going, arrows that let people know how to use this. And essays have those signs that help you know how to use them. So, we're going to talk about some of those signs and the way that academic essays are put together are linked to some basic expectations that people in academia have. So, one of the expectations is that it's the writer's responsibility to get the reader to understand the message. It's basically saying, in this exchange, it is the writer's job to do the work and the heavy lifting and make sure that the reader can understand what they're saying. And it is the writer's job to make the writing clear and easy to understand. It should be very clear for the reader how to get from point A or idea A to point B or idea B. In other cultures, it's different. There's a different pattern that's expected or a different burden of work. But in academia and school, it's expected that the writer does this work. And how writers are expected to do it is a pattern of we expect writers to tell us what they're going to say, then to actually say it, and to remind the reader what you just said. That sounds repetitive, and quite frankly, it is. What makes good writing good is finding new and interesting ways to do these repetitive moves. They still have to be there. You can just make them more interesting. So, what in the heck does this look like? Well, this handout is what I call an essay map. And this essay map, the boxes represent paragraphs. And on this essay map, there's an introduction paragraph. At the very bottom, there's a conclusion paragraph. And in the middle are the body paragraphs. In this case, I could fit 3 body paragraphs in there and it made it look nice. But depending on the length of your essay, you're going to have a lot more, usually, body paragraphs. So don't feel like you can only have 3. That's just because that's how many I could fit. So when we start thinking of this essay and this essay map, we're going to be looking for this pattern of telling people what you're going to say, saying it, and then reminding people what you just said. So the first big way we see this move is in the introduction paragraph. The whole purpose of the introduction is to get people ready for what you're going to tell them, to catch their interest. It's the move of telling them what you're going to say. Then the body paragraphs, the middle, are actually saying it. You're giving the details and doing the actual work of explaining your points. And then the conclusion paragraph is reminding them of what you just said. So there is this pattern at the big level, the big picture level within an essay. The interesting thing is this pattern is actually repeated within the body paragraphs themselves. At the beginning of every body paragraph, you have a topic sentence, and that topic sentence explains what the topic of the paragraph is going to be about. You're telling them what this paragraph is going to be, telling them what you're about to say. Then the support of the topic sentence is where you actually say your point. You give examples, you give explanation, you clarify, you support. And then the summary sentence is where you remind them of what that paragraph just contained. And you just keep repeating that pattern with each body paragraph. So you go from those 3 moves at the big level to those 3 moves in each body paragraph that you have. So, what does that look like in practice? And before you viewed this presentation, I asked you to read the essay, A Garden of Temptation. That will really help you understand what we're about to talk about. So if you haven't already read it, pause this presentation, go back and read this essay. It's short, it won't take very long, and then come back. So if we're looking at this Garden of Temptation essay, if it's formatted correctly, like an academic essay should be, we should be able to look at it and see these moves in these paragraphs that tell them what you're going to say it, remind them. We should also be able to see it at the body paragraph level. Now what we're going to do is actually pick it apart and see how it did. And to do that, I start labeling the essay. So I use the essay map, all of those pieces, and I start labeling the pieces of the essay itself. And that helps me see how the essay works together and double check to see if it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. The first thing that I label is what the paragraphs themselves are doing. So I label the introduction, each body paragraph, and the conclusion. So you'll notice that, like, even though it's the second paragraph of the essay, it's still the first body paragraph. So I label body paragraph 1, 2, 3, conclusion, introduction. Next, I label what the body paragraphs are going to be about, or what they are about. And that is actually a really important move, because in any body paragraph you read, whether it's yours or somebody else's, there should be one main idea. It should all be about a single idea. That's called being focused in on that idea. And so if you can pull out a key word that fits the entire paragraph, it's a really good sign that that paragraph is focused. And what I was able to label the paragraphs after I read them is the first body paragraph is all about vegetables. The second body paragraph is about fruit. And the third body paragraph is about the juice bar. So now that I have those labeled, I can go back and check the individual parts and see how well everything fits together. So in the introduction, the whole purpose is to get us ready for the main idea of this essay, which is the produce section. And if you read through the introduction, it introduces us to this grocery store and narrows it down to the fact that we're just going to read about the produce section, and it actually states that in the thesis. But when it comes to temptation, nothing at Harry's can rival the produce section. So from this thesis, we know that it's going to try and prove to us why the produce section is so awesome. And the thesis is the last sentence of the introduction, so it's exactly where we assumed it should be. Now we're going to look at the first body paragraph. Well, actually, let's go back for a minute. Before we figure out if the body paragraphs are good, let's make sure the thesis matches all of the body paragraphs. So, the produce section, does that match the topics of the body paragraphs? Vegetables, fruits, juice bar? Yep, those are all in the produce section, so it matches the whole essay. So that's the first thing we need to check if it matches. In the body paragraphs, what we're checking to see is first, does the whole paragraph match vegetables? And it does. And then the topic and summary sentence, that has to directly mention the vegetable section. And usually, if you're able to come up with a key word for the whole paragraph, you should see that word or a similar word in the topic and summary sentence. So I underlined the first sentence up here, the topic sentence. The vegetable bins at Harry's are a feast for the senses. And when I read through that, it matches the whole thing. It's going to be about the sensory details of the vegetable bins. And you'll notice that I didn't highlight, I put a square around the key word because that helps me identify that the writer did in fact use the right key word. Now, in the summary sentence at the end of this paragraph, it should be the last paragraph. It should match the entire paragraph. So the vegetable bins at Harry's provide a feast for the eyes as well as for the taste buds. We get the repetition of the idea of feast, and it's sensory feast, and it mentions the keyword as well. So those are both good. That's a good topic sentence. It's a good summary sentence. They use the keywords. So the next paragraph is about fruit. So what we're doing is checking to see if that key word is mentioned or hinted at in the topic and summary sentence. So our topic sentence should be that first one is, beyond the vegetables lie the fruits and a patchwork of geographic and seasonal variety. So it mentions the keyword fruit, and it predicts that this paragraph is going to be about how the fruits represent a geographic and seasonal variety, which it does in the whole body paragraph. What's interesting is, did you notice that it also mentions vegetables, which is the key word for the paragraph before it? That's an interesting move. Topic sentences have to have the key word that matches the paragraph that they're attached to. So this one had to have fruits because the paragraph was about fruit. But it also matched the paragraph before it. That is a handy dandy way of transitioning, is you mention the topic of the paragraph before it. Right now, just pay attention to when that happens. We'll worry about transitions later. But this topic sentence worked really well. Now, the summary sentence. In this section of Harry's, time and place blend in a fruit basket turnover. So it hinted at fruit, talked about a fruit basket turnover, which is a kind of dessert that is kind of old-fashioned, but it still mentions fruit. It mentions the time and place, which hint at geographic and seasonal. So those two match really nicely without using the exact same words, but both really hit that keyword fruit strongly. The last body paragraph is about the juice bar. So we're looking to see if the topic and summary sentences hit the keyword juice bar. So the topic sentence. For customers who can't wait until they are out of the store to sample the delights of Harry's fruits and vegetables, the juice bar offers instant gratification. So it mentions juice bar directly. Like we talked about in the last body paragraph, they use the keywords from the two previous paragraphs to transition into this last paragraph. Nice. It makes it a nice, smooth move into this paragraph, but they definitely said juice bar. Now, this paragraph has a really good summary sentence in that it hit the key words, but it didn't use the exact keywords. So our summary sentence is, there's no better way to end a trip through Harry's produce department than by drinking it in. The keyword is juice bar, but it's hinted at with the words drinking it in because you drink juice. So that works really nicely. It's hitting that, tell us what you're going to say it, remind us of what you're going to say without feeling repetitive. So that's a great paragraph to think about when you're thinking about your own topic and summary sentences. Now, the final paragraph is the conclusion, which, based on what we've read, should remind us that we went over vegetables, fruit, and juice bar, and that it was a very descriptive essay. So let's see how it went. Grocery shopping can be a chore, but at Harry's it is more often a delight. A trip through the produce department is a tempting tour through a garden where every vegetable is in season and no fruit is forbidden. It's fruits, vegetables, juice bar is kind of implied, not directly in there, but still the conclusion matches the whole essay. So this essay, it's pretty short. It's about half the length of the essays that we're going to be writing in our class, but it's a really good example of one that exactly follows these academic structure guidelines. And if you read it, I bet when you read it before we even talked about it, you could feel that it was very straightforward and flowed well. Being clear and straightforward is not an accident. It's not magic. It's including all of these little signs to the reader as you're going. I included another essay that you can practice labeling it on, labeling the parts of the essay. It's called Giving Academics the Edge. You will find a copy that is blank. It doesn't have all of my writing on it. And you will find a copy that is labeled so you can see how your labeling matches up to mine. It's worth your time to go through and label it. And you might be wondering, well, why does this level of detail matter? And it matters in a couple of ways. First is, believe it or not, even though we're viewing this because it's a writing class, if you understand the expectations of academic writing, when you read it, it will make you a better reader, because if you understand the patterns to expect, it will be easier because you can recognize the moves that the writer is making. You go, oh, he's or she is telling me what he or she is about to say. I better pay attention to this part. It helps you pay attention more strategically. So it makes you a better reader. For writing, it helps in a couple different ways. First, if you know what in the heck you're supposed to do, what moves you're supposed to make, it's a lot easier to make them. If you know you're supposed to turn, you know to turn. It's that kind of thing. The other handy thing is, like, we get in the process of writing and we think we did it right, and our brains tell us we did it right, but sometimes we didn't actually get it on the paper. So when you go back and reread your paper, you can start checking. You could even label your own paper to make sure that you had all of the key words. And it will help you revise your paper to know for sure that you have a strong topic sentence, you have a strong summary sentence. That's why it matters. And it will help you be awesome, just awesome in general. Thank you for listening to this presentation.